Welcome back, attractive and well-educated watchers, and... Wait, I'm not PhilosoShy. Yes, that's right. It's Anase Skyrider here. You may have noticed the slower release of the last couple sessions. Well, we actually skipped a play session due to Shy not being in the best of health over the last many days. Since our last episode, our favorite goofy goblins player, Izeth Original, started doing in-character RP on our Discord server just for fun. But when we heard about Shy's health and that we're skipping a play session, we decided that a reading of our characters' conversations would make for an entertaining video to fill the content space. With some tidying up and organizing, we have created the Frontier Audio Stories, a series of short stories, and when I say short, many are very short, that you can listen to, featuring our bad microphones and stilted voice acting. Don't worry though, I'm vaguely Audacity savvy. The chapter for this week, Rampart's Misadventures 1. These stories take place during Session 6 of our regular campaign in the downtime of our party's 5-day time skip that we spent building a large rampart to keep the rather affectionate wild animals free from our encampment. With that, please enjoy.
Hello Turner. I'm new here, at your tent. I've brought you cheese and was wondering if you could teach me a little bit about animal handling?
Sure thing, I'll show you how to have things literally eaten out of your hand. You got a squirrel there, how's it going with him?
Oh, Nutella is a good boy, but I have these saber-toothed tigers who... they really like looking at my ducks.
Yeah, I've seen those things. It's probably best to start small, but I can help you with those guys too. When was their last big meal, by the way?
Oleg holds up a few feathers. Just moments ago, they had duck. They swept them through the cage bars and had a snack.
They probably need more than the ducks. Let's go get a couple of my goats.
Oleg takes his notebook and starts to note down Turner's advice. Thank you for your help.
There's a little bit more to it than that, Oleg. It's just easier to teach them when they ain't hungry.
Oleg notes down. Easier to train when not hungry.
I got a place where I train my critters. You can use it with me there to help you till you get skilled enough to do it on your own. No offense, but I've been doing this for near a century now.
That's great! What can you teach animals? And how do we get the tigers there? Won't they eat ducks on the way? Can you teach them to fetch?
Well, it depends on what you want them to do. We take the cage to the training grounds so they won't get the ducks. We can probably teach them to fetch eventually, yeah. Oleg gets 18 on his wisdom animal handling check to tame the saber-toothed cats and teach them basic obedience. Obedience in this standard context includes basics like knowing who your owner is and knowing to come when called, not to chew on the furniture, not to shit on the floor, or eat your owner. 18 is not good enough, unfortunately, to instill that within them.
The day slowly reaches its end, though the sun hasn't yet fully set, when you hear some odd giggling right outside your home.
Inarl turns an ear towards the sound. Then she turns her head to look up from her book. She tries to figure out where the sound came from. After a moment, she shuts her book and gets up from her bedroll. She spits out the bitter leaf she was chewing on and heads outside to see what all the commotion was about.
As you stick out your head, 3 extremely small and rather cute-looking green goblinoids swiftly straighten up in front of you and smile awkwardly. You feel like rubbing your eyes for a moment. These are not just mini Olegs, they're mini Olegs. Kids.
Sorry, Miss Rabbit. We are new here, and we brought a basket of eggs. Can we...
The little goblin holds his tongue, clearly a little embarrassed. A second one steps forward with an egg basket full of fresh eggs and many ribbons in her otherwise scruffy hair.
Can we touch your fluffy tail, please?
She asks, offering you the basket.
She looks at them for a moment and then smiles. Kids have never asked to touch her tail before, so this was a pleasant surprise. Sure you can, she said, stepping out of her tent. She happily takes the basket of eggs and sets it by the flap of her tent before turning around. She sits down in front of the kids, making sure to tuck her robe under her as she does. Just be gentle, kids. It is very much attached to me, so it'll hurt if you pull on it. Her little fluffy tail wiggles for them.
The children cheer joyfully, with wide grins on their faces. They're excited for the tail and squish just a little, partly because they're gentle, partly because those tiny hands can't really muster up much strength in the first place.
Whoa, it's so poofy. Can you wiggle your ears too?
The little girl wonders.
Do you have a big rabbit tribe?
Gnarl giggles as their tiny hands tickle her tail. Oh, I can do a lot more than just wiggle my ears, she said, turning her ears, letting them flop down, even doing a little wave with them. Yes, I come from a very big rabbit tribe. We call our home a warren. And there are lots of other big rabbits there like me, she explained. We're not all related, but we're like one big family.
The girl can't help but reach for the tip of her ear and feel on it.
Whoa, they're warm, all the way to the top.
Yes, they are. They too are part of me, Gnarl said, her ear flinching away. They're a bit more sensitive though, so you can't touch them.
The three little goblinoids sit down on the floor in front of you.
Are warren super tall? Are they made of wood? Do you have a babushka too?
The smallest of them seems a little quiet all of a sudden. His little hands wrapped around his arms and gazing at his toes.
She puts a hand to her chin while she mulls over their questions. Answering the first, she says, "No, the warren isn't very tall. While we do like to dig them into hills, they generally go deeper than taller. Though our homes don't go as deep as those of the dwarves. We tend to stay where the soil is nice and can be dug out." "We kinda do," she hums at the second question. "We have many different roles in the warren. I think the closest thing to babushka would probably be a den mother. She wasn't 100% sure what their babushka did, but from what she's seen, it's definitely some form of leadership role. While a den mother wasn't the leader of the warren, they did serve as leader for smaller groups." Inaro looked to the smallest. He hasn't asked a question and seemed rather anxious. "Is something the matter?" she asks, leaning a bit towards him.
The little one picks up at you.
Ola says you use magic. You won't use it with us though, right? You won't call the monsters?
As you hear the little one talk, it hits you like a rock that these kids are just as wild and clueless as Oleg. Worse even, they rely on Oleg to learn about the world. In a dozen years, you might not merely have one Oleg in your settlement, but a whole army of Olegs.
"Oh, I see," Inarl says, her ears drooping a moment as the thought comes to her. Then she smiles. "Yes, I do use magic, but not the kind that can bring the monsters." She digs through her pouch for a moment and pulls out a seed. "My magic works with nature. It helps to foster and grow life." The seed glows for a moment, and then it gently splits as a green sprout springs forth. "I won't lie. There are some magics that can bring horrid creatures to our world. But where magic can be used for chaos," she uses a finger to dig a hole, placing the seed sprout in, then covering it up again. "It can also be used for order. Magic is the conduit through which we can change them." She holds her hand over the sprout. A green aura radiates out from the sprout, and slowly it grew, getting taller, growing leafier. A bulb forms at the top and swells. It is all a matter of how we use it, how we nurture it. From chaos we can bring order. The bulb bursts open, revealing a beautiful purple ball covered in small spikes. And from order can come chaos. She gently brushes the freshly grown thistle plant. And then we can take it back again. Chaos to order. A balance. She smiles and sits up, letting the children inspect the flower. This plant may look deadly, but it serves a medicinal purpose. It's only a tiny bit spiky and it smells quite nice.
The children are amazed. They get close to the plant and gaze at it in awe. The little one, still a little shy, takes a look at your hand, trying to figure out if there's a hole or something where the magic came out of.
Sometimes when I try to stitch up my fleece cover and I sneeze from the dust, then there are little bubbles floating out of it. But when I try to touch them, then they vanish again.
The girl confesses.
That's not magic though.
The small boy snaps at her.
That's just your will. It's just like Ola's knives.
Something tells you that there is far more to the story than a kid's imagination. Might she accidentally summon illusions? Or maybe see things that aren't really there?
His mama was taken by monsters.
The taller boy explains.
They like eating us. But if we stay far away from magic and chaos, then they can't find us.
Oh? Anarl tilts her head, thinking on the bubbles for a moment. Their simplicity could be any number of things. Illusion magic, some kind of special sight, even water magic. It could be that too, she said. Anarl hasn't seen much of this will power until recently, so she wasn't sure if it was strictly magic. Maybe it was something different. She carefully reaches out to pat the little goblins on the head. Well, you aren't alone. Monsters like to eat my people as well. I guess us little guys make good snacks, she jokes. It's difficult to stay away from magic. It can be found everywhere, but chaos is much easier to get away from. Our perception of reality is what helps push back the chaos. That's why we're here.
Perspection? What is that?
The little one, still busy looking at your hand, now pulls slightly at your sleeve.
Miss Rabbit, can you teach us perspection too, so we can stop chaos from eating us?
Inaro looks to the little one playing with her hand and smiles. She spreads her fingers out so he can see her fluffy little pads of fur. It's not easy to teach perception. It's one of those things that you learn just from being. It's seeing, hearing, feeling. You can get better at it with practice, but there's no real way to teach it, she explains. It comes from experience and knowledge. As you three grow older, you'll get better at it. She smiles and giggles as her hand is played with. Are you looking for something? It feels like you're trying to find something, not just play with my fur.
The girl hops up and holds her fist in the air.
I'll be brave like Ola, and I get to the dungeons, and I find all the knowledge and all the experience in the whole world. And then, no chaos will ever come to our tribe, ever again.
The little one, in the meantime, keeps looking. As you notice it, he stops at once.
Sorry, I just want to know what the hole looks like. The one where the magic comes out of.
Then learn well, young one. But do not be reckless in your quest. And Earl smiles at the girl's bravery. She looks to the little one as he talks about a hole and she giggles. There is no hole. Magic doesn't quite work like that, she said, letting her hand glow green for a moment. Though, I guess you aren't too far off. The magic does come from within. You move it through you like you move air through your lungs. And like with air, you can take magic in and release it as you need to. But be careful, little ones. She moves her hand away for a moment. The green glow turns red, and then a small fire lights above the palm of her hand. If you take in too much or channel it in a way the magic doesn't like, then this can cause trouble. She squashes the flame out with her other hand, and after a moment, her hands glow yellow. She whispers, "Magic may be used for balance, but remember to respect it, for even it has a life of its own." Opening her hands, a small golden orb now rests peacefully in her hand. She smiles and blows it away, filling the air with a fragrant scent of flowers. It's going to be sunny tomorrow. This is good for little kids who like to play, she smiles.
After a talk, you notice the children suddenly look at the void. All three of them. They seem to listen to something, even though there is nothing to hear, other than the noises of the wild.
Inarl tilts her head as the kids seem to get distracted. Her ears start to turn on her head as she listens out for anything only to hear the chirps and chitters of life winding down for the night.
We have to go.
The taller boy says.
Please don't tell Alla we were here.
They rush off to their encampment as the sun's last rays vanish behind the horizon.
Huh? Oh, sure, of course. She smiles, giving them a little wave as they run off.
As they leave, one of the three briefly turns around and glares at you. Mere moments later, you hear her little voice in your head.
Thank you, Miss Rabbit.
Inarl tilts her head for a moment in confusion. Hearing the voice, she blinks, then gives the girl a smile and a nod. With the children gone off to bed, she returns to her tent, setting her ever-bright lantern up and returning to her book. She hums a moment and flips to a blank page, grabbing a piece of pointed charcoal to start writing.
With the setting and rising of a new sun, the next day begins.
As you're about to leave your tent, you see Oleg dressed up in your armor, or looking like it, with his face painted to imitate your helmet. As he sees you, he steps back, holds up his gramishka, and wiggles it in your direction. Then he lets go of it again, as it makes no sound.
Aldous is lost in thought, rubbing his face, likely after a fresh shave, and mumbling to himself about something you don't understand, probably related to all that magic and chaos stuff. His armor is boxed up with his shield both on his back, and a small owl-like construct sitting on his shoulder. As he steps out, he almost doesn't even notice you until MD5 pokes him. Oh, hey Oleg, that's, some interesting armor there. Although, if you're gonna do the helmet, I recommend painting your eyes red. I've got some modifications in the works, should make the suit even more intimidating.
Oleg raises his eyebrow. If I paint my eyes red, then I can't see anything. He turns away and leaves at a fast pace. You can barely hear him mumbling. What was she thinking?
As Oleg is leaving, Aldous shouts, "Eyes sometimes means the eyelids, Oleg!" Then shrugs his shoulders and walks away.
I hear the shouting and light my pipe. Ah, yes.
Oleg appears in front of your tent. He seems to be wearing your clothes and has an oversized hat made of thin branches and straw on his head, his notebook in his hand. Hello, I'm new here, at your tent. I brought some cheese. Is it true that you can trap chaos on parchment?
Trap chaos on parchment?
Yes, you throw parchment at the chaos and it stops chaosing. Can you do that?
Calden is clearly confused. Who have you seen do that?
There was a guy who summoned sparks and another tossed a parchment and then the sparks were gone. I want that, but for all chaos, not just sparks. And people say you can make parchments who do that.
Oleg, I don't think that was chaos. I think that was just a cheap trick.
So, you're saying you can't make parchment that stop chaos? Not even a tiny bit?
I don't think that was even chaos.
Oleg lowers his head. The tip of his usually straight-up peaking pointy ears drop and flop, making him look like a sad puppy. Well, it was worth a try. Thank you for your time, Calden. It was nice to talk to you. He places the cheese in your hands and walks off with the notebook in his hand, scribbling.
Thanks, I guess?
Oleg Oleg stands in front of your tent. He's wearing the same outfit you wore during your diplomacy efforts with the spiders. He has fake ears made of straw and little branches on his head. After consulting his notebook, he greets you. Hello, I'm new at your tent. I brought some cheese. As a very successful girlfriend, would you maybe have some advice for me for my girlfriend?
Inarl jumps slightly as she comes out of her tent to find the tall hobgoblin there. She looks him over for a moment and notices the ears, and has to stifle a laugh. With her composure maintained, she accepts the cheese, giving Oleg a small bow. Oh, you wish for relationship advice? She asks, an ear flicking as she hums in thought. Well, I would say communication is rather important. A good relationship should benefit all parties involved, so knowing the needs of your other is best. And that way, when feelings change, you can move on and not drag each other along in misery. She gives a smile and a little nod. Then she puts a hand on her chin as she thinks again. I do not know if that last part will apply to your people, though. Others have called Harengon relationships flighty. I believe that was the term.
Oleg looks down on his notebook, yet something holds him back from writing. He twitches a bit, then he takes off the fake ears and rubs his head. It's really hard to be in your shoes. Don't you ever get a headache from carrying those ears around? He places the ears on the ground and gets back to the notebook. We do talk a lot. We listen a lot too, but it doesn't work. She's a half-elf, an old culture person, while my people and I are all not that. She told me that I have to put myself into other people's shoes and to see things from their perspective. But when I tried to be in Aldis's shoes, he told me to blind myself with red color. I don't think she says what she thinks she says.
Inarl watches as Oleg takes his fake ears off, then looks back up as he talks about walking in other people's shoes. Things begin to click in her head, and she can't help but snort in laughter. No, she manages to squeak out, taking a moment to catch her breath. When you're born with them, they are part of you, so they are less likely to bother you, she explained, flopping her ears a couple times as to demonstrate that. When Oleg continues to talk about his girlfriend, she nods in thought, a hand on her chin. I see. She takes a moment to think. They don't mean their statement literally. They speak in metaphors. Your girlfriend doesn't want you to actually be in other people's shoes. She motions to the fake ears on the ground. She wants you to put your mind into... She stops, realizing she was about to metaphor. She taps her foot for a moment to think. She wants you to use your brain and think of how things are for other people. I will say, the dressing up thing I feel may be a step in a good starting place in doing that. To wear their clothes, you probably get some sense of what they go through. I know my stuffy noble robe certainly has some feelings to it. She glances back in her tent, as if she was talking meanly behind someone's back and was making sure they couldn't hear her. My plain robes do me just fine, she said, giving her side a pat. Her everyday robes weren't truly plain, but it was definitely a lot simpler than her noble robes.
Oleg follows your glance into the tent, but doesn't investigate any further. Instead, he observes you very, very attentively, then taps his shoulder as well, and within a few seconds, the noble dress he wears turns into plain clothes. Your plain clothes. You are hiding who you are, aren't you? You're lying to yourself. He scratches his head. Why?
Inarl's ears stand straight up. What? No, I'm not. What in the realm would give you that idea? She says, hands going to her hips as her foot starts to tap in place. I've got nothing to hide. I just don't like wearing those fancy clothes. If anything, those feel like the lie.
Oleg mumbles a little, takes out his notebook and scribbles. I want to understand you, but how can I be in your shoes if your shoes aren't actually yours? Maybe it's easier if we switch and you slip into my shoes instead? They're mine all the time, and they feel like mine too. Oleg takes off his boots and offers them to you.
Inara looks down at the boots, then to her own feet, then back up to him. I don't wear shoes, she states plainly, wiggling her bunny toes in the grass. She sees he's starting to get the metaphor, maybe, but not quite there yet. I get what you're saying, though, I think. Yes, you could say I have multiple pairs of shoes, but, She hums for a moment, trying to think of how to explain it. Okay, think of it this way. You wouldn't wear fancy dress shoes when you're going through a swamp, yeah? Your boots would be a better fit for that. Well, people do sort of the same thing mentally. Our mindset, what we think, will change and adapt to what's needed. The shoes can change... She thinks for a moment. Breaking a metaphor down like this makes her really consider its meaning. But the feet stay the same, so... Okay, no, I'm going too far into metaphor again. She shakes her head as she hummed in thought.
You have different pairs of shoes, and you have them even though you don't wear them? What an odd thing to do. Oleg scratches his head. Then, however, he places his boots on the floor and wiggles his toes. Well, if you wear no shoes, then I wear your shoes if I wear no shoes, right? What is it like to be you without shoes?
She looks at Oleg's feet for a moment, then chuckles a bit. I mean, by that logic, yes. If you want to walk in my shoes, you go barefoot, she says, looking back up at him. Her neck is definitely getting a workout today. Look, what I'm trying to say is that people can be different depending on the situation. Like right now, you're seeing me in a casual situation, yes? This is quite different from when we're fighting storms of cutlery or negotiating with spiders. If you're going to understand people, your girlfriend included, remember, you're going to see how they act in different situations.
I have only one girlfriend. She doesn't allow me to work with other clans. Oleg clarifies for some reason. Then he ponders. Something doesn't make sense. I don't eat cheese when I fight, but I like it no matter if I fight or not. I don't really change. Why would changing clothes change me? Why would putting on shoes change me? Why would doing different things change who I am?
Torner is sitting quietly in his tent when he says, "This beer tastes really good for some reason."
Aldous is at his tent when suddenly he says, "This coffee is really energizing tonight."
Inarl tilts her head at the odd statement. She isn't sure what she said to bring that up, but oh well. Well, I mean, Inarl starts again. She scratches her head, her leg thumping the ground as she tries to distill her thoughts to be as literal as possible. It doesn't change who you are, just how you act. You are still you, but you don't always show all of yourself at the same time? She wasn't quite sure how to explain it. She had a good metaphor, she thought. Something about different shoes but feet stay the same. But she felt that might lead to Oleg thinking he'd need to take people's feet. Finally, she lets out a sigh. Look, just give it time. Talk to people, learn what's going on in their head, and someday you'll understand them. Okay?
Oleg nods in thoughts. So, girlfriends don't just are, but change how they are when they are in different situations. And maybe different clothes. So if I want to make sure that what she says is really what she means, and not just some act, then I have to make her change her clothes, or fight her, and ask her again. Sounds easy enough. Thank you for your advice. He smiles.
Inarl smiles and nods. He is starting to understand, and that is good. Then what he said clicks in her head. Don't fight your girlfriend, she quickly states. You do not need to force a change of situation. You just need to observe. Asking a question is good, though. Asking stuff will get you good answers and will help you learn about them. She watches him carefully as he processes this information. She wants to make sure he understands and isn't about to go challenging people to duels or fashion shows.
Alright, so ask in different moments, but not actively change the moment. Alright, that's doable. Thank you for your advice. He smiles, slips back into his boots, and wanders off.
Inarl nods and smiles, happy with the progress she has made. Exactly, she says. I'm glad I was able to help. I hope you can learn much from the people around you. She gives Oleg a wave as he wanders off. Once he's out of sight, her shoulders relax and she lets out a relieved sigh. She turns and heads back into her tent. This was a tiring little conversation and she is ready for a snack. Maybe she'll give that cheese Oleg brought her a try.
That's all for today, listeners. The stories do not end here, though, as we have many more to come in the recording and editing pipeline. Day 2 isn't even over just yet. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you liked it, for some reason. And you can hear more of where things go from here. Learn more about Oleg and the activities of the other player characters. Stay safe out there.